Coming to you live from a cabin deep in the heart of the Canadian wilderness. Turn down the lights, get yourself a drink, and let's settle in for tonight's broadcast. Good evening, and welcome to Midnight Mysteries. Here are your hosts.
Welcome back to Midnight Mysteries, the heart of Canadian Paranormal Radio. My name is Nathan.
Hey, Midnighters. Tonight we're talking about UFO investigations and the Mutual UFO Network, aka MUFON Canada.
Tonight we are talking about unidentified flying objects or UFOs, and in our modern sense today they're often called UAPs or unidentified aerial phenomena. And it's a phenomenon that's puzzled scholars, it's frightened witnesses, and it's inspired countless theories, from little grays to otherworldly visitors to interdimensional beings, top secret military aircraft, or something we haven't even guessed yet. But what's lesser known is the history of UFOs. And I'm not talking about from the Roswell incident or Area 51, during the 1970s and onward. I'm talking about way long ago. And even though these UFO sightings in ancient history aren't necessarily what we would define as UFO sightings today, there have been encounters in ancient history where people have seen objects in the sky, and in some cases these objects even fighting with each other in the sky. So that's where we're going to start today. We have painted frescoes, we've got crafted artifacts, and we've got some encounters that have been etched in stone by what many interpret as celestial visitors, from the vimanas in ancient Indian texts to the flying shields depicted in Renaissance art. There's no end to these encounters throughout history. To start off, we have the ancient Sumerian epics, which speak of the Anunnaki, and these were deities who descended from the heavens in powerful vehicles of some sort. And this topic of the Anunnaki, or Anunnaki, as I've heard it pronounced before, has been more recently talked about with people like Stephen Greer or Graham Hancock, and then there's the book, I believe it was Chariots of the Gods by Eric von Daniken. And so that's a bit more known recently, but we also have things like the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, which depict these sky vehicles coming down, or what they called sunboats, where their gods would travel through the sky in these sunboats. And they bear striking resemblance to modern depictions of UFOs. And these crafts were often shown radiating light. They were descending from the stars. They were merging the quote unquote God's spiritual presence with their technological prowess. And don't get me wrong, I fully believe in biblical angels, but some of them are awfully suspicious, with wheels inside wheels and light shining from the center of them, and eyes all around them. Or you have Elijah being taken up in the chariot too. And I'm not saying this is a UFO in the modern context, but it was some sort of vehicle that swept down, picked up Elijah while Elisha witnessed it, and took him into the heavens. Another famous bit of evidence concerning UFOs in ancient history is the Nazca lines in Peru, and they're these vast geoglyphs carved into the desert. And from the ground, these lines appear as mere scratches, but when you have a bird's eye view, they reveal themselves as intricate designs of animals, plants, and shapes. And some theorists suggest that they were created to guide or perhaps honor those who visited from the sky. But even Peruvian historians will say that these lines were put in place to communicate with beings they were seeing in the sky or believed they were seeing in the sky. we have these ancient encounters, and they set the stage for the modern era of UFO sightings. And this is getting into our context today. And just like the ancients' eyes were on the skies, ours are today too. And as we delve further into the history and the eyewitness accounts that have shaped our understanding of UFOs, the line between past mythologies and present realities really blur. Those lines blur together, leaving us to wonder about the true origins of these, mysterious visitors or crafts from the stars. So if you fast forward from ancient times to June 24th, 1947, private pilot Kenneth Arnold claimed to see 9 high-speed objects near Mount Rainier in Washington. And his description of their motion, how they were acting, was like a quote-unquote a saucer if you skipped it across water. And that's what gave birth to the term flying saucers. And this encounter marked the beginning of modern UFO lore. And then following the Kenneth Arnold sighting, we have the war in Vietnam, where the term Foo Fighters was coined. And the term Foo Fighters was a precursor to our more semi-modern term of UFOs today, and then from UFOs to UAP. And the band, Foo Fighters, named itself after this term from Vietnam describing UFOs in the sky that the American soldiers saw, Canadian soldiers, and a number of other Allied armies reported seeing. And then half a century later, thousands witnessed the Phoenix Lights. And the Phoenix Lights were a formation of orbs and what appeared to be a larger craft the size of a football field, from what I remember, that glided silently over Arizona's night sky. And this mass sighting sparked governmental inquiries and public uproar, fueling just the skepticism and also stoking the belief in UFOs. And the American government responded with criticism and denial, and the governor of Arizona came out alien gray suit, mascot suit, and said, "Oh, look, this is who it is." And he later came out saying that he was put up to it in a sense to criticize it. And the mystery of UFOs extends beyond sightings. Governments worldwide have been accused of stifling information or of hiding or misconstruing information. And the Freedom of Information Act really helped propel the disclosure of UFOs, because you've got people that can sit at their computer or phone at home that can petition for documents to be disclosed. These documents, in a lot of ways, have shown that governments across the world have known more about UFOs than what they've admitted to. From UFO encounters where there's been radiation burns or cattle mutilations with organs removed with laser-like precision, to unnatural pregnancies and other weird phenomena. You've also got high-level people coming out, like the former defense minister of Canada, Paul Hellyer, saying, "Yeah, I was involved with UFO cover-up and it exists today." From the art of ancient civilizations to the cell phone videos of today, the UFO phenomena remains a mystery. It's something we're still trying to sort through and figure out. And is it, interdimensional biological beings? Is it aliens from the serious disclosure movement? Is it angels and demons? Or is it all of the above? Is it strictly Men in Black? We don't know. With the amount of evidence out there, with the amount of eyewitness testimony, with the amount of disclosure documents available, with the amount of mass sightings, both in modern history and ancient history, are we able to objectively and with conviction say, no, none of these are real, they're just misinterpretations? So let's jump in for our interview tonight. Tonight's guest is Dave. Dave has been involved with MUFON Canada for more than 10 years. His fascination with atmospheric anomalies began at an early age. It was during the TV program Hangar 1 that prompted Dave into joining MUFON rather than doing his own investigations. Since joining, Dave has been a field investigator, then the national chief investigator, along with the Ontario provincial director's role. He took over as the national director in January 2020, and last year passed on this role to Eric Tessier in Montreal to devote his time more to membership recruitment, presentations, and forensic research. Dave's drive into MUFON Canada earned the team the Best International Chapter Award for 2023. Dave is a part-time college professor, works in the electronic security industry, providing management, design, and forensic analysis of videos. He is also a co-founder in CEW Systems Canada, which has the only unbreakable quantum resilient encryption solution on the market. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you. All this is great. It's nice to be back on a podcast. I haven't done this in a while, although I did a live presentation last month.
Jumping into it, Dave, you and I go back quite a few years, but I don't really know your history involving UFOs that much. Did you grow up with the belief in UFOs at all?
Yeah, I had a very scientific mind. I still do, obviously. I mean, I've studied nuclear engineering, computer sciences, electronics, you name it. Always been a scientifical type person, and my mind kept seeing things and looking at things and questioning things. And yeah, I kind of grew up with it, knowing that we weren't alone. I was brought up in a fairly strict religious environment, being a Presbyterian, and that's pretty, pretty strict. And so I had both. You have the religious side, you have the scientific side, and listen, we're not going to get into politics tonight for sure. We're not going to get into religion, but is God an ET? Hey, let's not get in there. You guys watch Ancient Aliens and make your own mind up.
What was your earliest exposure to the concept of UFOs? We talked about Hangar 1, but did you have any friends or family that had encountered a UFO? Or what was the thing that made you go, UFOs are really out there and they are more than just space rocks?
It's something I've never really given a lot of thought to, but I know it was 10 years ago, this year, that I joined MUFON. And before that, I guess I was, one of the things I did as a side business was professional photography, a lot for business and stuff, but a lot of it was outdoors. I wasn't the wedding photography, line them up against the wall and shoot them, So I had seen some things, and it's just like, well, I had the natural inquisitive mind, so I investigated them myself, learned as much as I could. What was the deciding factor that, I knew we weren't alone and UFOs were real? Well, I guess I've always grown up with that belief, so there is no deciding factor.
Were your parents into it, Dave?
No, like I said, they were Presbyterian and strict, so
Hmm.
no. But my dad and my mom too, both had a very open mind, and made life growing up very easy, because whatever, Dave wanted to do, it wasn't called Dave, but Dave got to do if he justified it. They had open minds. It wasn't like the answer is no.
Nice. Yeah.
And, I mean,
supportive.
I was 17 years old. I said, I want to go to Japan by myself for 30 days. Okay. How many parents will let just turn 17 go to Japan for 30 days by themselves? So they were pretty open that way.
Yeah.
Dave, do you know what a cento is at all?
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
A cento in Japan?
Now I went in 1970, guys.
Yeah.
No, but after 31 days, I could speak a lot of Japanese, but no, I can't remember.
I went to Japan in 2012, I think, and I was with a couple that didn't really speak much English, and they told me we were going to go swimming. And I say, well, I don't have swim trunks. And so we stop at a 7-Eleven and they buy me some underwear. I'm like, okay, this is kind of strange. And we get to this, what I think is a swimming pool, and everyone in the change room is taking off everything, but not putting anything on. And that's when I discover it is a bathhouse.
Yeah.
And so here I am in the middle of, all these Japanese men, and I'm like 2 feet taller than all of them, and pale and blonde, and I'm just shocked. So that was my experience with Japan.
As soon as you started telling me the story, I remembered what it was. And yes, how do you think I kept clean? Bathhouses.
Yeah.
Because I didn't stay in hotels. I state in the Olympic Village. I stayed in temples.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
All the free places.
Yeah.
Lodgings and, what do they call it when people just travel around and get
hostels and stuff.
Yeah, hostels and stuff. So yeah, I lost my inhibitions real quick that way. Like, wow, okay. That's how you get bathed. And the water was so hot. Oh my God. You go from the hot to the cold, and you soap in one, you jump into a real super hot tub. Oh, yeah. I can take a lot of heat now. I don't get burned.
Well,
that's crazy.
that's a great segue. As part of your personal journey, we know that MUFON takes a very neutral stance on what UFOs could be, but what do your personal beliefs involve? You had kind of mentioned that you had some experiences with UFOs or UFO sightings. Can you dive into that a bit?
Well, I have traveled a few places in the world, specifically to do sky watching. Um, I go either by myself or lately I've been teamed up with Rob Freeman. He's on YouTube and all that. He's the World UFO Explorer. And the group's called Atmospheric Anomalies, which was in my bio. Just threw that in for fun.
Nice.
And yeah, we have seen so many things, unbelievable things. Now, in order to become a really good field investigator, you have to keep an open mind, but you have to really study to figure out, is it a satellite? Is it space junk? And we do a lot of research. So as Rob says, when I'm along with him, I'm his debunker. I'm to tell him it's not a UFO, but
Yeah.
anyways, we go out we set up around 6 o'clock. We come back at 6 o'clock in the morning. And what do? We go to bed. No, we start looking at all the video and we have about 30 cameras, including new
Wow.
electronic security cameras, which I'm using. But we have on his system, and we have three systems. We have what we call the weapons of mass detection. That's in his blogs and his shows. And on there is infrared, ultraviolet, night vision, full spectrum, you name it. There's 5 or 6 cameras on that, very expensive cameras. Then we have what we call a mini me. That's 3 more cameras that are shooting time-lapse photography. So full spectrum, infrared, and daylight. And then you can compare them. And on my system, we have infrared, full spectrum, and some security cameras that are specially designed for night surveillance. And I can't get into them because that's what I do professionally, but we're testing them out in the field. I'm trying to get a sponsor, one of the makers, to maybe sponsor some of our trips using this special equipment.
So it's probably easier to
Nice.
list what you don't have as part of your tool chest. Hey,
Well, we don't have a near FLIR and a far FLIR, which are $20,000 each. So
geez.
forward
And
looking.
what is that? What does that do? I don't know.
The big bubbles under the helicopters that the military and the police use. So
Oh, geez.
forward looking infrared, but there's long wave or long range and mid wave. I don't want to get into the technical parts of it, but they see different spectrums. The
Interesting.
military uses the long and the commercials use the medium waves because it detects people and heat and body temperatures.
Mhm.
Whereas the long range will detect dangers. How do I get into it? Because it's classified a bit.
Sure.
So yeah, and they're $20,000 each, and they're hard, they're heavy, they're big. So there are a
Little
couple smaller versions we're
little
looking
pocket change. Hey,
at. Yeah, little
yeah.
pocket.
Right.
Hey guys, you should see how much Rob has spent on this weapons of mass detection. Oh my God,
Oh my
we're
gosh. I
talking
can
6
imagine.
figures times 3. Um,
So you've got all
but we
these
do,
cameras facing the sky.
yep.
What happens?
What happens? Lots. I don't think, well, I'll tell you what happens every single time we have our own anomalies. We went to the Bruce nuclear facility, made sure everything was running, all the batteries fully charged. We set up, we turn them on, all the batteries are dead. It happens all the time.
Right.
What?
You go
Yeah.
100% to 0.
Do
He
you
was
think that's like an energetic thing? Like what drains
yeah,
them?
we're doing research trying to figure it out. We don't know,
Mhm.
but we took them away back to the place like after done. Luckily, we had other packs. We got them up and they seem to be working. But the one that starts pulling current, when we fire up, all hell breaks loose. He was in Australia, and the professional TV channel crew all came out. They're shooting all of a sudden everything goes dead. It's like everywhere that we go as a group, some silly little strange anomaly happens,
Whoa.
and all the time. Then we see UFOs.
Of
So
course.
my best one was when we went down to the Mojave Desert in California, just outside of Joshua Tree National Park. That's a beautiful area. We stayed
Wow.
in the Joshua Tree Yoga Retreat Center. Beautiful. And they fed us and everything, so it was a good deal. We're down in the desert, just behind the place. You walk down for about 10-minute walk, and you're into this dry riverbed. And we set up 13 15 chairs. We had 15 people, so we bought those gravity chairs and we set them up in a big circle so everybody can see anywhere. So everybody has to get their point. So I'm northwest, I'm 10 degrees, I'm 20 degrees. The whole idea is you you shout out your position and what you see so everybody can turn, but the entire 360 around you is covered by people and cameras. And the best one we had was the very first night we're watching all these lights whipping around. It's like, what the hell is this? I'm looking on the map and I studied everything, and they're like, are these drones? Are these airplanes? Well, we know they were commercial because they're flashing red and white at one second off, 1 second on. And suddenly they're red and then they're green. And we go, okay, this is something circling. So like we agreed with a light show on the very first night. It was kind of fun, but that's not what we're there for. So I got in the car the next morning and I drove about 35 miles around the mountain, and there was a Marine Air Base. I've never heard of Marine Air Base in the mountains. And it's all restricted. It's not on any maps. And this was their surveillance and security drones flying over their base at night. So the next night we obviously pointed at a little different direction, so they weren't in our pictures. But it was the very next night I saw the first U.S. vision UFO. So one I've seen down well in the U.S. So I'm watching what I thought was a satellite coming overhead. We have trackers. I have a whole case behind me that's got all the computers in it. I can just set up with a battery pack, and I can track satellites, I can track weather, I can track airplanes. And that way, if I'm not sure, I quickly look and go, oh, it's an airplane or it's a satellite. And I'm watching this when I'm going, it's just a satellite. I won't call it out. And I think it's going across the sky. And I went, wait a minute. I'm looking exactly due east. That satellite that should be crossing right now should not be going due east. That's not going across the sky. That's coming down. And just as I yelled my position and streak, because that's telling you it's coming down, it stopped. Everybody looks and they're looking at nothing because it's a light.
Right.
And I said, no, guys, see that little tiny pinpoint of light there, at my position? That is, and all of a sudden, right hand turn, bang, gone. Everybody, woo, because they all saw it. They didn't see it come down, but it did a 90-degree instantaneous, it's out of there. So that was a good one, sighting for the second one. That was incredible to see. The third night we're shooting, and I saw what I was positive was a satellite. And we never thought any more about it. But I just reviewed it, and this is years later, because I was down there in 2017, and it's been bugging me. This is the type of investigator I am. I pulled the video back out because I realized that could not have been a satellite. And I always, go back and review things. I take notes, and sure enough, there was no satellite in that position at the time. So I have forensic software. That's what I do for a living, right? So I put it through my forensic software. And as I'm watching it, it suddenly does a turn. Okay, satellites don't turn. Space junk doesn't turn. And I never noticed it that night. Nobody else noticed it. But as it turned, another solid light starts moving. As if it was catching up to it.
A bit of interaction, hey?
Yeah. Another one takes off. And this one does a little wiggle, like it's trying to slow down quick or do something to catch up to the other one. And my forensic software showed that track. It showed a left-hand turn, a little wiggle, and then it took off. So it took off to meet the other one, and then suddenly the other one I thought was a star took off. It's like, oh, boy, do we see some interesting things. And the only reason we see them, because we are at the right time at night where the sun is reflecting off of them. They're not producing light. It's like satellites. Satellites don't have lights. It's the sun reflecting off the metal bodies.
So when investigating and researching UFOs, and I know witness testimony is very confidential, but sometimes there's witnesses and experiencers who have given permission to share. Is there a particular witness story that just really blows your mind, one that stands out from the rest?
Well, if you look for a new book that's coming out, now I don't write books, it's called Missing Time 2. Based on Bud Hopkins' Missing Time book. One of our own MUFON investigators is an experiencer himself and does experience research and, witnesses. And he's put a new book out, and I have listened to his stories. I helped him write the story. He's gone through hell all his life, and he's kind of a better man for it. He's had to put up a lot of stuff. And there are certain things which I will not discuss on the show, which give away if it's fake or true. There are certain parameters, and all the ERT, Experiencer Research Team documents that have been produced. There are certain parameters that come to light and they're told by maybe 100 people over a course of a year or 2 years, and this particular or few particular observations match. Somebody who's trying to fake it doesn't know about them, and they never mention it. But every other one that we say this is a real experience has that same little caveat that makes it jump out.
Right, a little insider detail.
Yeah, and he was the first one that brought it to my attention. That because he's doing interviews with experiencers and stuff, that everyone that he had a real gut feeling right away was a true experiencer, was abducted or taken, had this exact same detail that he had. So it's interesting.
Well, instead of teasing us, what can you share from a witnesser or experiencer that's given public permission that is just really, this is what drives me, or this is one of the things that just keeps me digging down deep?
Guys, when it comes to experiencers, not too many people actually or witnesses give you public permission. So that's why I can't talk about specifics, but I've probably myself interviewed about 100 over the last 10 years, along with our own investigator. And I'm not going to mention his name right now because I forgot to ask him if I could. But if you look for the book that's coming out later this year called Missing Time 2, then you'll know who it is because he's not hiding behind it. But anyways, there had been some very interesting ones. There's been some good kooks too, but I hate to say that, but people who imagine things. But it's that's going to happen anyways. It happens even in UFO investigations. People see things. What were you smoking that night?
Well, that's a great way to introduce the next question. Is there one that just seems too out there to be real? For instance, seeing Elvis on a UFO or something along those lines.
Can you imagine?
I haven't had Elvis yet. Oh, that'd be fun when that happens. Well, I had one lady in Ontario who kept insisting we had to come out and sit on her property and watch. And I didn't take her up on it, but I went out to her area and I sat in the just off her driveway. So she didn't know I was there. I set up my cameras and stuff. And I recorded the night, and I knew every satellite, every piece of space junk, every airplane coming in. And the next day she posted a report. It was an airplane. She's right under the flight path, and she keeps thinking of UFOs, and she kept going on and on and on. Now, that's not the worst one. The worst one was an elderly woman in Ottawa. No names, obviously, guys. And she kept sending me hundreds and hundreds of pictures. And I said, do you really see these when you take the pictures? She goes, no, my eyesight's really bad, so I use cameras, and I look at the pictures afterwards. Well, lady, take your camera and get the focus fixed, because that's all it is.
Oh my God!
Hundreds of pictures all out of focus, and oh my God! And
that'd be so disappointing.
Really couldn't see. She thought that's what she was getting because she was using a camera as her eyes.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Okay, I just have a quick question, Dave, because I don't remember where I heard this, but I think it was on another podcast a long time ago. Somebody was saying if you take your cell phone and then go out in the sky on a clear day and film in slow-mo, and then watch the video back, like if you film for maybe like 5 minutes, they're like guaranteed you can see sky activity. And then, but now what you're saying, I'm like, I wonder how much of that is just space junk and satellites.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's the problem. Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, a cell phone cannot focus in the dark because it keeps trying in and out. And then you see those little things go in and out.
Yeah. Well, this was talking about daytime. So,
okay.
But just saying that there's a lot of sky traffic out there.
Okay. So when you're filming in slow mode, your film is sped up. Okay. So instead of 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second, it's shooting at hundreds of frames per second. So when you play it back at normal speed, it seems slow.
Mm-hmm.
It is true that if you're using super high speed cameras, which is why I'm using security cameras, yes, you can see things that your eye can't see because our eye only sees at typically 30 to 60 frames per second. That's why your TV is syncing at 30 frames per second. You see a solid picture. Mm-hmm. If you saw higher, you would see lines. You would see lines going back and forth.
Yeah.
So security cameras have the ability to shoot at 120, 240, 360. It's amazing. But you can buy high speed cameras that can shoot up to digital cameras, shoot up to 1,000,000 frames per second.
Whoa.
Now, very expensive. And there's a guy on YouTube called the Slow Mo Guys, and they have spent $1 million buying all this camera equipment. They'll take a bullet and they'll shoot it at 1,000,000 frames per second, and you can watch each frame as it just touches things and starts doing what it does. I watch them all the time because we're about to buy one of these cameras.
Nice.
So we did a little test with them, and yeah, we have seen some things. Because how are you supposed to see something going Mach 30, Mach 40 past your eye,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So yes, we're about to buy one to take on the trip and see what happens. Now, if you ever watch the Skinwalker Ranch or Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, they feature a company that comes on with 100,000 frame per second cameras and a 500,000 frame per second camera.
Wow.
And they've claimed that they've seen things. I saw some of the video, and yeah, it seems okay. Now, Rob and I were invited to go shoot Beyond Skinwalker Ranch in the Everglades in Florida, but it got canceled because of hurricanes and stuff, and they had to move elsewhere. So it's still probably on. We'll be going down, and we're going to be taking that camera plus all the stuff behind me, which is our sky watching equipment. This is all security cameras with a computer running it. This is a unique device. It's made by Ron Olch out of California, and he came up with the concept, and he's been selling them. So we bought a couple, and then I said, Ron, I'm going to help you enhance it. He goes, how? I said, I'm going to put a second camera on it. Ooh, he got all excited. So I'm working on it. I've just finished it. So his camera, when something comes into view, it's a tracking camera. It's a PTZ, pan tilt zoom, and he'll start following it. But I'm putting a second camera on that sees a bigger view. So if something else comes into view, now this camera knows to go back and grab that one and not waste time sitting outside of the frame. Because if you go to the far end, it takes 10, 15 seconds for it to come back to the home position. Well, the other camera sees it, it zaps it to the position right away. So we've sped the whole thing up, and it's working pretty good.
So when you look at news footage or coverage of UFOs recently, how much do you believe is genuine? How much do you believe is possible misdirection or controlled narrative? We had the burst of weather balloons and other activity at the beginning of last year, was it?
Yep.
And
the Chinese weather balloons and spy balloons and all that stuff.
It always seems to happen around bill time or certain elections, etc.
Yep. So when I started MUFON 10 years ago, or even before MUFON, I was concluding that 5-6% of all sightings that are reported are actual unknowns. Let's use the word unknown. In the last 10 years, that has been slowly increasing. One of the reasons is that because COVID, people stayed home and they sat outside.
Right.
And
watching the sky.
In the winter,
Yeah.
I praise smokers. I don't encourage smoking, but you should know, as a MUFON investigator, I was outside on my back porch having a cigarette. You can't smoke in the house. They see more than anything because they're always looking at the sky. But anyways, that is now 8 to 12%. It went from 5 to 6 to 8 to 12.
Wow.
And all our cases in Canada are proving that 8 to 12. And I'm using a wider range right now because it'll take 2 years for us to actually get an actual number because it jumps so quick. And I believe that. I believe that 8 to 12% of all sightings are genuine unknowns, UAPs, UFOs, USOs, underwater submerged objects. And I've proven those numbers over the years, and I've proven them as they've increased. So I've had the advantage of being the national director, and when I was a national chief investigator, almost seeing or be involved on some part or some degree on every case that came into Canada. So when the ones that were being directed towards the unknown as the conclusion, the investigators would call me up and get I guess I would agree and approve or do more forensic investigation with them, look at videos and pictures. And so I got to see the ones that were truly classified as unknowns more than anybody. And so, you're talking 5,000 cases in the last 10 years or more. So that's at least 500, if not more. So
I think my favorite cases I've come across is the ones who have had no interest in UFOs before. They're not the people, taking thousands of photos of the night sky every night and seeing every airplane or satellite and reporting them as UFOs, but it's the farmers who notice something weird when they're out and about. Or there was a case here in Alberta a couple years ago that I got to go talk to the farmers about, and their cow had its sex organs were missing with laser-like precision. The tongue and eyes were missing. It had been exsanguinated, or blood had drained out. Nothing in the soil around it. And the RCMP had come, and they're like, well, most likely ate some sort of plant that caused its stomach to swell and blow these parts out. And these farmers had been there for generations, right?
Yeah,
They're
right,
like, we are familiar with our land and nothing like this has happened. But they had no interest in UFOs, but they had Googled cattle mutilations and came across something I had done. And it was just, I love those type of reports because they're so grassroots.
Yeah.
Now, Dave, there's those type of reports, there's those type of encounters, but there seems to be more of a spiritual aspect starting to happen too. You look at Jacques Vallée's CE5 or CE scale, and how CE5 has become really prominent with Dr. Stephen Greer. What are some of your thoughts involving the spiritual side of things, or the psychic phenomena surrounding UFOs and things like that?
Well, let's start with my beliefs on CE5. If you get the right people with the right mindset and the right attitude, you get them together to do a CE5 seance. Let's call it a seance because I'll get to why I'm using that word. It does work. And I've been in many. And we have had some success. We've seen things that we shot and captured and couldn't figure out. And we only figured that, well, we're in an area that we've never seen anything before. And we have a place up in Ontario here that we go to once in a while. COVID killed it, but we're about to start it again. And we've been successful twice there on about a half a dozen, so 2 out of 6. And you do this CE5s. Now we do use the CE5 noises and songs, and I use the word noises because some of them are just that Dr. Stephen Greer put out. I'm not going to comment on him and what he does or his trips that he puts together. I have met Dr. Stephen Greer. I've talked to him a lot because when I was the co-producer and director at ACE, the Alien Cosmic Expo, he was one of our speakers. I didn't invite him back next year, so that says it all. So yes, it works. I've seen it work. You have to have the right mindset. You have to have the people believe. Now, why do I call it a seance? I said that because UFOs and paranormal go hand in hand. And I'm pretty sure they're like almost one and the same. What we see as ghosts just could be an ET or something in another dimension, then you don't get to see the whole thing. Okay. There are four answers to what a UFO or ET is. It's very simple. The first one is an actual being or something that flies in from another star, another galaxy, another part of the universe. Well, not another universe, but so long distance travel. That's number one. Number two is parallel universes. Some just stepped over the line and showed up in ours accidentally. How about a different dimension? Came out of a different dimensions. How many dimensions are there? We know of 3. Fourth is time, right? Left, up, down, forward. 1, 2, 3. That's your 3D. And fourth is time, right? There's actually 11 proven dimensions in our universe. What if this is number 12 and they suddenly cross over and something happens and they're here? Okay. Same as what is a portal? A portal is a wormhole that came from another place of the galaxy or universe or another universe. Mm-hmm. So 1, 2, and 3. What's the fourth one? Time travel. Us coming back, and we don't look like we do now. So there's 4 possibilities of what an ET and UFO are, and I believe in all of them, and I've proven they can be all. We caught a portal in one of the trips down to, I think it was Argentina, on the top of a mountain. I can't remember. I wasn't there. And I analyzed all the pictures, and all of a sudden this portal opened up and then it closed.
Whoa.
That's what they're trying to prove at Skinwalker.
Right.
There's a portal. And
Yeah.
I've been trying to get hold of them to go down there, but then we get invited to go to the Beyond Skinwalker. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I'd like to look at some of the stuff. Now, I said, Rob, you and I, let's rent let's rent a RV and go down to the place. Let's get permission to park way far away, stay away from where they're shooting if they're shooting, and let's do our own little thing and then share the results. But we have seen portals, and some of the equipment that we have, which they do not have, is how we captured that portal. So I'd love to let them see it. And Rob's all keen to do it. And we do have, we had a direct contact to Brandon Frugal, who owns it. But that was an ex-MUFON investigator. He's no longer with us now, so that dried up. So I'm having troubles pursuing that. But I would definitely drive down to Skinwalker Ranch to see what's going on. But it's not the only one. That's why they have Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. They're checking all these other weird places. I will state it now, right now. Have you guys ever watched UFO Cowboys? Not the movie, the show, the Cowboy Skywatchers. It's on Roku.
No,
I
I've
don't
never
think
seen
so.
It's unscripted, and these guys go around searching for UFOs, and believe me, it is the fakest show I've ever seen.
it. Oh, probably.
But it's
Imagine.
unscripted. They set up scenarios and then just get out there and do it. You
Yeah.
know what?
Yeah.
God.
Exactly. Well, that kind of leads me to one of the questions I had for you, Dave, which is in Canada, are there any specific UFO hotspots?
Absolutely. Lake Erie is known as a UFO flap. Yeah, I
Really?
know. I wanted to start with that.
What?
Just before COVID, we had a year where you had
So
30
really,
sightings.
really quick, what is a UFO flap for our listeners who aren't familiar?
A UFO flap is basically more than 6 sightings within a couple months in the exact same area.
Oh,
Okay, so we had 35 sightings over the course of 18 months over Lake Erie, from both sides of the border, because I had to get the MUFON investigators in Erie, Pennsylvania, and everything over there to cooperate, so we could find all these things. And once we did that, the funniest thing is that somebody captured a UFO streaming over Cincinnati, and the same day somebody caught it over Canada. I guess what's on the other side of Cincinnati? Is it Cincinnati or Cleveland? Cincinnati. Which one's on Lake Erie? Anyways, I don't know my American cities. And 5 minutes later, somebody noted the time, saw something fly by, and the same. So that was confirmed. Well, there's something screaming by there, and directly north, somebody saw something screaming by over Canada. And a day later, somebody saw it way up in northern Ontario. Like 3 people saw a very fast moving object, and it's not a satellite.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't see satellites during the day.
Any other Canadian hotspots?
Alberta has a couple, and right now we're planning a trip to Saskatchewan. There is a little tiny ferry that crosses a river, and over the last 3 or 4 years, there's been 50 some odd sightings. So we're taking all our equipment out there later this summer, and we're going to set up for a week. We're trying to find a B&B so we don't have to take tents or rent an RV.
Yeah.
And one of our field investigators from Saskatchewan, Saskatoon, is going to come up and join us. We want to see what's going on. Why do we keep getting all these reports? And there's one little backwoods, there's no highways around. It's the only way across the river for 20 miles. So they put a ferry in, and it keeps getting all these reports. We already know why we're getting reports, because people have sit for hours outside their cars waiting for the ferry.
Yeah.
And they're looking around. They're looking around.
Yeah, well, sorry, continue.
No, most of them were during the day.
Because
the ferry doesn't run at night. So I know it's not satellites. It's not space junk. It's not airplanes, because they're out during the day.
Yeah. So. Well, and both Saskatchewan and Alberta have the advantage of having like huge open sky.
That's exactly what we're going to, an area that the tallest thing is a 20-foot tree. Right. No mountains, nothing. So it's going to be great. We'll set up, and if we get an RV, we'll set up on the top of the RV so we're above everything.
Yeah. Well, and when you mentioned the portals thing before, Dave, that was really intriguing to me, because I just thinking of ley lines and like energetic fields around the earth. I'm sure it's related, but I was wondering, like, when you have had MUFON investigations, have you ever come across something else by accident, like unintentionally, like a cryptid or like
something else comes up?
Yeah, you just stumbled upon something else, like some sort of anomaly.
Other than batteries going dead, equipment failing. I would say the only thing that really happened, we were up on Oshawa looking over Darlington nuclear, because we do studies over the nuclear generation plants, because believe me, they're coming. I don't want to get into that. Are UFOs attracted to nuclear and power? Absolutely, yes.
Mm.
But anyways, I just happened to be turning my camera around to do some adjustments, and I stopped and I realized that's something over Pickering, because I can see Darlington and Pickering, and I had the long lens on. So I'm shooting something over Pickering that was happening when I wasn't even there to look at Pickering. I was looking at Darlington.
Oh,
So
that's
that
funny.
came out of the blue. I was
Yeah.
glad it happened. So we caught something at night in a different location.
We
Go ahead.
continue, please.
No, go ahead.
We one of our most recent episodes was a former military police gentleman who oversees the CE5 community here in Alberta, and they've got like 3,000 participants. It's wild.
Wow.
But he, earlier on in his career in the military police, they were out on a training exercise and all of their equipment went dead before this entire group of military police guys saw a huge UFO. And it's interesting because a number of them have completely forgotten that night or have no memory of that night
What?
afterwards
Mhm.
too.
Wow.
But part of that was with Buffalo Lake, which is a huge intersection of ley lines here in Alberta. And we had talked to a number of the residents out there who are like, "Oh yeah, there's strange stuff in the sky over at Buffalo Lake." And it's awesome because Alberta has a number of dark sky preserves too, which I'd never heard about until recently with these northern lights, where it's just extra dark places of Alberta with the night sky.
That's what we look for, dark areas. Light pollution kills the sky watching.
Yeah, you can't see anything.
Well, here in Ontario, we go up to Algonquin, go into the backwoods where it's up high and there's not a single light. You can't see a light. We captured a weather anomaly a couple years ago up in Algonquin. We're shooting straight south, and 300 kilometers away was Lake Erie. That's how far up we were. And all of a sudden, I saw a spark in my eye. I went, "Oh, I wonder what that was." And I happened to turn the cameras that way, and then nothing else happened. Well, later the night we came back, and one frame had a weather sprite. A weather sprite is incredible. Does anybody even know what a weather sprite is?
Please
So it's
unpack it.
like
Oh, you can't see it, but see that? So
red, yeah.
that's a weather sprite. I hit the button. That's a weather sprite. Okay, so the bottom is a reflection on the lake. The top, my phone keep going off. Oh,
Is it like lightning or no?
no, it's a special
I've
atmospheric
heard of it.
anomaly, but
Yeah.
this one here, I'll tell you how big it is. It only lasts for fraction of a second. This one was 35 kilometers tall, and about 25 kilometers wide, and that's why it looks like it's hanging down. They only see them from the ISS.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we happened to capture one, and we sent it in the Weather Channel. I said, "Oh, you captured a weather sprite. Yours is the red. Yours is the wavelength that shows up in red." So it's on my phone because we were out looking for that. We were out looking for UFOs. We didn't see a UFO that night, but we caught this great weather sprite.
That's pretty memorable.
It
That's
is.
awesome.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
I tell you, something always happens. You ask me, does something else happen? There's an example.
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of times, I always ask the person, did you see it with your eye, or are you looking at a photograph?
Yeah.
That happens to us a lot. That's why we review everything at the end of the night, and it could be hours and hours and hours. It's funny, while we're up there, we put these little motion detection night cameras in the B&B we rented. And the next day I got up and I said, I should check the video. And I pulled it down, and it shot 700 some odd pictures. I go, what's going on? Who's sleepwalking? I caught another ghost.
Yeah.
Ghosts.
I was gonna ask you, like, is ghost investigating similar to UFO investigating? I feel like it would be.
I think it's a crossover.
Yeah.
Like I said, what if somebody's not coming through 100% and from another dimension or another universe, or parallel universe, and you see what is like a ghost?
Yeah.
And I have captured, when I was shooting as a professional photographer, I had a friend who said his house was haunted, and his kids were hearing a piano playing at night, and there's no piano in the house. Being an investigator, see, like I said, I was an investigator. I did a lot of stuff. I went to a lot of haunted places too. And so I did some investigation. We found archives in Scarborough that the house was built in the 20s, I think, 10s or 20s. And a young woman had been murdered in the house. And it was over the piano that she was using, and she was teaching small kids, but her husband went nuts and murdered her because he couldn't stand the piano noise or whatever. So the piano was in the house still, but nobody could get to it at night because it was in the garage and they turned it into a studio, right? So you'd have to go out of the house to go into the garage to go play the piano, and nobody's out there. We put cameras out there and nobody's out there.
Yeah.
But there was no digital cameras back then, so I was using my 35 millimeter cameras, which is all those cameras up there, the 635 mils gathering dust out there. They all still work. They're all professional Canon single lens reflex cameras. And I set it up with an IR trigger. I built an IR trigger. So it's sending out an infrared beam. If anything in the infrared spectrum crosses through it, it would block it. And the next morning he called me up and he goes, how many shots was that roll of film? I said, it was 36. He goes, well, it's sitting at 0. Because I got there, got it out, took it and got it developed. We had what you might call orbs, but all these white things all over the place was triggering it. And there was a shadow of a person, and it looked like it was a she, you could tell, was dressed in something similar to a 1920s dress.
Wow.
Whoa.
Was his house haunted? You know what he did that next day after I showed him the pictures? And he kept the picture. And
put it for sale?
Yeah.
No,
he's like,
we took 3 axes, 3 sledgehammers, 5 other bodies, and we destroyed the piano to take it out of the garage and took it to the dump.
Did it start screaming as you were destroying it, or maybe you should have burned it?
Anyway, took it to the dump, and he says he never had any incidents after that.
I was gonna ask, did the incidents continue to stop?
Wanted to move still.
Yeah, well, I bet.
Oh my God.
But
well, that ties in with our next question. Over time with MUFON and your personal experiences, how has your view on UFOs and possible extraterrestrial life or interdimensional biological beings evolved? Has there been any significant shifts in your belief or approach, or have you always believed that this could be a mix of other dimensions and spirituality and everything else on top of that?
Loaded question. So I still believe in the 4 different ways of us being visited. Have I seen UFOs? Yes. Have I seen UAPs? Yes. Have I seen USOs? 1. So I've seen something go underwater. Have I seen ET? That's a question I always get asked. No. Do I want to see ET? Yes. Like, I'm the guy who says, if we're having a CE5 and suddenly a door opens up, there's a portal, who's going? I'll say, bye guys, I'm gone. I'll go.
Nice knowing you.
Yeah. So what was the question again? No, I'm kidding. So yes. Has it changed though? Well, you hear all these people saying, well, they're on Earth. They're here. They're already here. Well, of course they are here. If they're coming from another dimension on our own planet, they're already here. We just can't see them. There's a lot of great movies where the guy puts on his glasses and sees all these bugs, crawling on people, and they're in another dimension. And whoa, yeah. Anyways, I can't remember that movie. But if they're here, they're here. And are they bothering us? No, because they can't interact with us. Which brings up another thing. Should we fear ET? No. I'll get to that if we have to. So has my perception changed? Yeah, it's evolved. It's developed. I don't believe that there's 86 different species here on Earth. I can't fathom that. Is there 2 or 3? Yeah, the Nordic, the Akanaki. Oh, I'm so dry today.
Anunnaki.
Thank you. I've worked so hard. I was doing presentations today.
What about reptilians? Is that up there?
That's a hard one to swallow, but you know what? I'm a great Star Trek fan.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I've seen it all.
Yeah.
I've seen it all.
Yeah.
And I'm also a great Doctor Who fan. I don't like Star Wars. Yeah,
Nice.
I can live without Star Wars, but I'm a great
Doctor.
Doctor.
We're done with this interview then. That's
Oh, you're a Star Wars guy.
Get off the show. No, I'm kidding.
No, I have no Star Wars stuff up there on my junk shelf. So it's evolved. I believe that yes, they could be here if they're in other dimensions. Are they here walking among us? I'll tell you a little story, and you can make your own conclusion of what I think. So I was at ACE in 2017 in Brantford when I was helping running it. That's the same year we had Travis Walton up. Got to know him very well. I had lunch 3 days, dinner twice with him. Like, he just wanted to keep talking. That guy has the same story every single time I see him. I've had him in front of me a couple times when we talk. He was on another race. The guy is fantastic. The guy is true to his beliefs, and nothing ever changes. Nothing varies. So anyways, Where am I going from there? I'm at Seance. I'm sitting in the back beside the guys who are shooting the live broadcast because you could log in, pay your money. And so there's nobody sitting in front of me, keeping it clear. And there's rows of people behind me, and there's two empty chairs on my left. So I'm watching the panel. Victor Viggiani is doing the emceeing. And I, out of the corner of my eye, see this very tall blonde lady coming in, kind of Swedish looking, Finnish, and she's got to be 6'2", 6'3". She goes by everybody, comes and sits down right beside me. She says, "Excuse me, sir, I know you're running this. Who is Victor Viggiani?" Everybody knows who Victor is. He's the MC. I said, "That's him on the right." She gets up, she walks out. I started thinking, that's a really strange question, right? I turned to the guy behind me. I said, "Did you see that lady?" And hear what she said. "What lady?" Before I get finished, she goes, "What lady?" The people to the left of me said, "What'd you think of that lady who went in front of you and came over to talk to me?" "What lady?" Nobody came in front of me. Now, there was one camera that caught her coming in. Okay. Yeah. Nobody saw her. I got up out of my chair, bolted out, because I figured I know where the only exit is right now she can get to. Get to it. I can't find her anywhere. She's gone, vanished. So was spooky. I visited? Was being visited to let me know that, yes, they're here walking among us? And that's what she looked like. She looked like some of the depictions of the Swedish ETs.
Right. Kind of pale and, tall, like you said.
So when I say I've never met ET, I lie. I do believe that. I actually did that day.
But that's a lot more difficult to explain than a gray, tall, pale woman.
Other grays are androids like Data on Star Trek.
Yeah.
I got a lot of
interesting.
I have no proof, though.
Beliefs, of course.
But I investigate. I don't give things up. Like I said, I came back to the Mojave Desert thing, all these years later, 7 years later. It just came back to my mind again. I stick stuff into my library in my brain, and all of a sudden it knocks on the door. So I went out. Oh shit! I meaning to do that, and I went and found it. I showed it in my presentation. The silence in the crowd was incredible when they saw the second one move when the first one chasing it, because they're watching. I said, "I want you to watch this point. And I want you to watch this point." And this is live video shot. And they see the one moving, and all of a sudden does some really weird things. And I stop the video. And then I put the tracker on and I show the tracking line of what it's doing. And all of a sudden then they notice the other one move. So I think that was amazing.
So you'd mentioned that you don't believe we should fear any of these things. I guess how do you wrestle with abductee phenomena or experiencer phenomena that seems, more traumatizing than it is enlightening?
So of the 86 aliens, that number is crazy. I think we have 3 or 4.
That's like genders, hey?
Some of them are benevolent, some of them are helpy. You're right.
Yeah.
Some of them. What can I say? Obviously, look at us as humans. We have good, we have bad, we have evil, we have too good. Come on, we're all different species, even though we're one.
Right. Yeah.
So who knows if it's happening for sure? And believe me, I do believe it is happening. And who is doing it? Now they're saying it's the Greys, but I interviewed one person and she swore that there was a reptilian standing in a corner directing the Greys. We don't know.
Right.
As I keep saying, the reptilians are the nasty ones. Just because they look like praying mantises. Looks are not everything. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Right.
I'll let you know when I meet one. Like I said,
I'm a lot nicer than I look too. I'm crusty on the outside, but nice on the inside. So when you hear encounters like Men in Black or Men in Black with Greys, who do you think that is? Do you believe that's the Illuminati or Freemasons or the shadow government? Where does that
the Illuminati run the government through the shadow government. They're not the shadow government. They run the government, but they have nothing to do with Men in Black. So you all know that the CIA was produced because, we had to have a secret, blah, blah, blah. And the Secret Service was produced because we had to have a secret, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into the politics. So Men in Black is basically part of the shadow government, and they have shadow budgets and stuff, but it's not as much anymore. It was the people hired or put together in order to dispel all these rumors of UFOs. They were the conspiracy people to draw our attention away. Swamp gas, weather balloons, Star Trek, the Enterprise. So yeah, it did happen. And I have some documents I can't release that shows it did happen. I have some documents that were part of Blue Book that were given to me by the late Stan Freeman, who I knew very well. And I can't release them because he died and he never gave me permission to release them. He photocopied and said, "Here, Dave, go read these and don't you dare disclose these." Now, he was a nuclear engineer. He produced the first nuclear rocket engine for GE. And great stories from him. And if you want to talk to somebody I know very well, another late great, our Honorable Paul Hellyer, I used to pick him up at his house and take him to Ace every year and drive him home and bring him back and all that. I got the real stories in that conversation. We became good friends on that respect, not personal friends, but in regards to UFO. So I got some really good stories. Again, some of the stuff is still basically classified. I honor my non-disclosure agreements, honor the fact I have a Canadian security clearance and I have a NATO security clearance. So there are some things I cannot discuss and will not discuss.
Yeah.
And that's why I can say, do not fear ET.
Hmm.
And I won't say any more about it. But if they want to destroy us, this is where this conversation started, they would have done it.
Right.
Maybe they did. Who?
Yeah.
Well, you've heard the theory that we've been restarted 5 times.
Yeah, maybe we're the echoes, hey? Yeah.
Why is there
like genetically modified or tampered with?
Yeah, why are there signs of nuclear holocaust in India's and places and stuff where the rock is all, melted to glass and can't be done unless it's a nuclear explosion? Why is there a hammer that's millions of years old found? Why is there that computer they found, that brass computer they found in the ocean? I forget what they call it, but these things should not be possible by the time frame that we are in right now. We didn't have the abilities to cut perfectly laser cut stones 5,000 years ago. So the question is, were we helped by extraterrestrials or was society restarted? Quick, everybody gone. What's the story of Noah's Ark? Was that really a biblical story or was that the earth got restarted?
Right.
Reseeded.
Or any other apocalyptic literature that's been out there. Yeah.
Ancient aliens, they have the proof. They go around the world and they show the proof. And yeah, it's not fake. Nothing is fake in that show. Everything you see is for real. Their conclusions are their own personal ones, but draw your own. And yeah, they're showing us. Why are we seeing carvings that are 10,000 years old showing a guy in a space helmet?
Right. Yeah.
Or carrying a cell phone or a laptop. You've seen those.
Yeah.
You guys watch Ancient Aliens? I love the show.
I used to watch it like religiously.
Yeah. I think I still have 100 episodes recorded that I haven't watched.
Oh, my friends send me the meme all the time, just aliens. But wasn't it's fun. Theresa sells toques that have a little label that says tinfoil hat on it. And
well, it says tinfoil, but it's a
so
hat.
it's a tinfoil hat.
Get
but
it?
even you look at disclosure documents with the CIA and how they coined the term conspiracy theory to discredit people who question the official narrative. Right? Yeah.
Let's not discuss tin hat people today, okay, please? I don't want to talk about radicals or conspiracy theorists that's what I call tin hat people.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Well, how do you handle stigma surrounding UFOs in your public discussions and in your research? How do you handle those conversations when somebody's like, UFOs, what's that?
Well, one of the first thing is when I do presentations, it advertises what I'm doing. Okay, I've done some in public just before COVID in libraries and got the rooms filled. I'm going to go back to doing that. That's what my mandate now is. And I did one just at the Off-World Bar on Queen Street in April.
That's funny.
And they're trying to get a little ace running again. Leslie Mitchell Clark and Wes Roberts. And I did a pretty good presentation on some of the things I've seen. I had fun with it. It's not on YouTube or anything because I'm still editing it, but I'm waiting because I'm not going to put it out until my partner Chad, who's the partner in out west, who is part of CEW, and that's our encryption software. And he's a MUFON investigator too. And him and I started working on things, and I let him run with it. So that's the thing I wanted to talk about tonight, mainly. And so I'll get into that in a couple of minutes. So how do I handle it? I usually only get people who are really open-minded and interested in UFOs. I've never had a heckler come in. I've never come in and say, I don't believe this junk. I would quite simple. If you don't believe it, why are you here? If you're here, it's because you're not truly convinced that you don't believe it and you want to hear the facts. And if you are truly convinced that you don't believe it, there's the door, because you're not going to interrupt all these people here. You know, I've done this once before, and I've never really had more than one. And I don't even know where that was. I think it was at Ace, actually. So I'll handle it, but I don't get them, so I don't have to worry about it. But I do disclose right away what we're there for, and I will state that I believe. I mean, I have this beautiful UFO poster on my wall from X-Files that says, I want to believe, but my presentation is, I do believe, because I have the proof. And that was the name of all my presentations this year are all called I do believe. So it's not I want to believe, but I do have the original poster. Not the Billy Myers, but the original one that they changed it to.
Right.
So Billy Myers' picture is what the X-Files used, and they got sued for it. They had to change it. I got both. I have Billy Myers here too, his picture from, where was he? Sweden, Finland, somewhere? I can't remember.
Yeah.
So I don't have to worry about it, but I do have the simple answers, and I've only had one person, so I don't get.
One of our Midnight Mystery stickers is actually the "I Want to Believe" poster, but it's a JPEG version, and you know it's shocking how many Canadians. Huge. It's shocking how many Canadians believe in UFOs. This is some of the research I sent to a friend, but in 2019, there was a poll by the Angus Reid Institute, and it revealed that 4 in 5 Canadians believe intelligent life exists elsewhere in the universe.
Oh, they didn't call me.
And then almost half of all Canadians believe aliens have already visited this planet. And then there's a Ipsos poll in 2016 that said 2/3 of Canadians think that intelligent life exists on another planet, with 56% believing that UFOs are real. And conversely, 1 out of 10 Canadians claim to have seen a UFO. And those statistics shocked me because typically, Canada seems more like it's academic and more logical and less open to spirituality or the paranormal. But, deeper research says it's not, right?
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
We are Canadian, not American.
Yeah.
No more comment on that. My cousins down there hate it when I say that.
Yeah. Do you think Americans are more skeptical or more accepting than Canadians of UFO?
Not as accepting, but the thing is they go overboard. That's where all the tin hat people.
Yeah, they get a little bit.
Conspiracies come from the U.S.
Right.
So Canadians have a more maybe scientific or like observational, logical,
maybe more critical eye, or
critical view.
More of a reserved attitude about speaking about it and not jumping off the conspiracy band,
jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, and those numbers do not surprise me at all there, Nathan. Not at all.
Yeah. Well, okay, so with all this in mind, where do you think MUFON is heading in the next decade? What do you think the focus is going to look like, especially with the growth of, CE5 and some of what we've been talking tonight?
I'm not 100% sure. MUFON went through a bad period where it was being, well, you're controlled by the U.S. government, you're funded by the U.S. government. It took a long time to get people to realize that we're not. That's all conspiracy and lies. And when I took over here in Canada, I basically called up, it was Jan Harzen at the time, I said, I'm going to run it the way a Canadian's going to run it, not an American. So don't expect me to fall in line with absolutely everything. We'll modify things. We don't have state directors and assistant state directors, provincial directors anymore. I changed the whole thing because we didn't have enough people. I mean, look at the size of our country, and we have to cover the entire country, where I built it up to 55 field investigators just before COVID across the entire nation, where every state in the U.S. has at least 55. So, we only one fraction of what the U.S. has. But the funny thing is we get 10% of the sightings, and we're also 10% of the population. So it goes hand in hand. The numbers speak for themselves. Same as Great Britain. Great Britain every year, and I used to know who ran that, also gets the same amount that we get. And basically they have the same population in a smaller place. So wait a minute, if they're getting the same amount of reports and they're all squished into the little island and we're spread across the country, something's going on, because it's not, it's not location sensitive. We're talking a huge country and they're talking a little tiny country, and you have to get the same amount with the same amount of people. So you can't say, well, MUFON, you're lucky if you see one, MUFON Canada, you're lucky if you see one, because, it's they could be in all the bushy areas that we never go to. Well, that's not true, because they're coming to see us. So anyways, I find that interesting. That's why I believe those stats that you just stated, it made sense.
It makes sense with MUFON's numbers,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Seems to be the number of observers, number of eyes looking at the sky is proportionate to the number of reports you get.
Saying eyes to the skies, always.
Yeah.
So I found that interesting that UK, we were always in a competition. How many unknowns did we have? You had 510, sightings. We had 511. And we were always in a competition. Right?
Oh, we had more. Yeah.
And then France got in on it. And I had a little problem with that because I didn't speak French. I think I was being taken advantage of. Anyway.
Well, was it France's foreign minister of defense or intelligence officer who came out and talked about UFOs behind the scenes and stuff like that? I don't remember his name.
The Ministry of Defense in Israel came out and talked about it. Their chief scientist came out and talked about it. The Brazilian government says you can look at our files anytime you want. And actually, Rob Freeman flew down there and saw the general, and he opened the files. Said, "Here, come." He sat there for 2 days reading all the files.
Yeah, and that's a conversation I have with friends who just are hugely skeptical or have no belief. I'm like, you have Paul Hele, like you talked about, the late Paul Hele, former defense minister of Canada. You've got all these huge people. At one point, what witness are you going to believe that there are UFOs out there? It seems like you're being ignorant here.
Well, and you got to obviously get credibility of the witness before you can believe it. You got to prove the witness is credible. That's the hardest part of the investigation. But there's some pretty good witnesses. There's some pretty good cases I've seen. And again, I stand by a lot of different sayings. As Paul said it the best, that UFOs are as real as airplanes flying over our heads. So, I guess I have a scientific mind and I have a very open mind, and that's why I like investigating. I never draw conclusions. I never jump to conclusions. I formulate an answer. So it's not coming to a conclusion. It's the proof is there. This is the answer. Okay. Right. I'm not driving myself to it. It can only be this answer. And that's what makes a good investigator. And that's what I look for in all investigators, because I trained a lot of investigators in the last 10 years, right? The last 8, because I started training them after Chuck retired and wouldn't train the Canadian ones. And I think Stu Bundy at the time says, "Dave, you're now the new trainer." I've only been here 2 years. Well, that's because I'm a part-time professor, so I can teach.
Hey, you trained me. I still have my MUFON manual. Yeah,
I know I trained you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got 3 or 4 of them here.
Yeah.
I stopped buying them. I don't care if there's a new update. I don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
I probably know more than the book knows, and you will after a while.
Yeah. Well, even really quick, even Carl Sagan, who was like famously agnostic, just didn't believe in religion or anything, but he said there are unidentified flying objects. That is, there are hardcore of cases, perhaps 20 to 30% in different studies for which there's no explanation.
Right. So he kind of became a believer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's circle back to what you said you really wanted to dig into something tonight. Why don't we circle back to that?
So what Chad and I have been working on is we've seen all these, like the Puerto Rico, the FLIR cameras shooting these UFOs, military or coastal or border patrols. There's a ton of them out there, and they've been all released by the governments. Now, like the Tic Tac, the Go Fast, and the Gimbal finally being released by the U.S. Navy. We looked at all those because, being scientifically minded, nuclear engineering trained, physics trained, I kept saying to Chad, I see warp bubbles. He goes, "So do I," because he's right into the stuff. So he started, I gave it to him. He went into it and he went full force on it. We started looking at all these videos and using my forensic software and stuff. We can see space-time dilations or, changes. So let's call them warp bubbles around a craft as it moves. And we've
Mm.
got blow-ups of things as it's going over a roof line. You see the roof line warp. That's not an optical illusion because you can't do that. Even if it was heat pouring out of there, it wouldn't warp it the way we're seeing it. Not only that, the FLIR camera is showing it's cold. It's not hot because we're using the videos from the FLIR cameras, the very expensive, $100,000, $500,000 FLIR cameras that the border securities use. So we're analyzing all these, and we've come up with quite a few that we have proven that there is gravitational lensing. That's the scientific term for a warp bubble. So as it's flying by, how is it flying? Anti-gravity propulsion. So it's creating a warp bubble. I use the Star Trek and the space sci-fi terms. It's creating a warp bubble for it to move forward. And of course, it collapses behind. You can actually see that with the proper forensic software. These
Wow.
are government released videos, not somebody who shot some on YouTube. We saw one the other day and I went, that's fake. But then I found out it was a commercially bought infrared camera, surveillance camera. So we re-looked at it, and sure enough, what I thought was faked was the time frame or delay of clearing the sensor. So as it moved, it created a trail, and then the trail dissipated. But that's because it was a cheap infrared night surveillance camera. It was only a couple $1,000s. So we've proven that once I found out what the camera was, and again, that's part of the investigation, that one true was also was creating gravitational lensing. Alchemira's warp drive, the technical or theoretical warp drive, is based on gravitational bubbles or warping or gravitational lensing. So scientists have proven that it is possible to go faster than the speed of light on paper. We haven't been able to build it. Takes a tremendous amount of power. So maybe it's element 115 on Pentium, Bob Lazar. By the way, I thought Bob Lazar was phony and real at the same time. And I sat on the fence for years until one day they said element 115 is real. He found it years ago, and that's what they were using. That's the day I said, man, this guy's for real. And because nobody would have been able to come up with that years before scientists actually invented it. And he had the actual mass number correct, the atomic mass number, so it became number 115, and he called it an unpentium, and it would have been the mass of 115 in the table, periodic table. And that's what it turned out to be. They got something that doesn't last very long, but it is 115, exactly to the specs that he came with. It does exist. So I started believing Bob Lazar. I also watched him being interviewed on Joe Rogan, and who else was with him on that show? Somebody else was with him. But I kind of always listen carefully and don't come to conclusions. And at the end of it, I went, yeah, he's telling the truth. Because years before, I'd seen him do interviews, and I said, I don't think he's telling the truth. I sat on the fence for so many years.
Right.
So gravitational, that's what you got to remember. Gravitational lensing. Look at the next legitimate UFO video. Slow it down. You need a little bit of a good software to slow it down. You can let frame by frame by frame, and you'll see the background warping. And you can't do that with CGI.
That made me think when you were talking, Dave, because you drew a connection between UFO energy movement and nuclear energy. Do you think that maybe that has something to do with like how they travel, how they move?
Oh, you need a lot of power to create a gravitational lensing effect or a warp bubble. So it could be nuclear, or it could be an unpentium, and it could be a 0-point module. Everybody wants to watch Atlantis come for real, where you get the ZPMs, you stick it in, you got light power to light a whole city for life, and that's possible, by the way. Now that's my physics and my nuclear engineering talking. Okay, it is possible. We just don't have the technology to do it yet.
Yeah, but theoretically, it's possible.
Very, very. It's been proven years ago.
Yeah.
So, nuclear, some other source, nuclear would be one possibility. If we created a nuclear rocket, which Stan already did, and they actually shrink it because it was pretty big back then, they could create a pulse drive and an ion pulse drive fueled by a nuclear engine. It could run for 100 years or more. And there's no fuel coming out the back. It's ions. Boom, you're pumping ions and you get into the thrust because, as Einstein said, for every action, there's an opposite equal reaction. So you push this way, you go that way.
That's
So all you can do is
interesting.
take some ions, which are in the atoms all around us, and pump them out the back, and a nuclear powered rocket engine can do that.
That's
So he's working
interesting.
that.
Only because I sometimes work for another podcast, and we did an episode a long time ago about weather manipulation, and we found all these weather manipulation patents going back to like even the early 1900s and late 1800s. But one of the most recent patents has to do with ionizing the atmosphere, and I always wondered if that has to do with potential like UFO or alien interaction, that they're trying to almost like make our atmosphere more friendly for interdimensional travel.
Yeah, just don't go to Hollywood where they're trying to change it for them to live here, and we don't. They would have done that years ago. Okay, so possible. But let me tell you one more thing. So in 2018, just before COVID, I was part of a group in the US. My friend in the US, who was my business partner then, we kind of just held everything up. He wanted me to build him a quantum computer, and came up, and we looked around, and we just couldn't find the right technology or the people to do it. But he's a billionaire. So he says, well, what do you need? $50 million just to start? And yep. He wants me to build him a quantum computer. So anyways, that's on hold. But anyways, in 2018, he called me up and says, you're going to be part of the head of our group. That's going to be 6 people. We had finance, we had engineer, we had me, which is full knowledge on everything. And that's me. That's what he called it. A marketing person, and then somebody else, him, because he holds DARPA's patent for anti-gravity propulsion. It's a real patent. It's a real patent. And I can talk about it because it's public knowledge now.
Wow.
There is a real patent. DARPA spent $500 million to prove it works. Got to the last point, and just like we did with the Avro Arrow, they just scuttled it. Said, okay, we know it's going to work. We're not going to put another $500 million. We don't want to make one.
Yeah. Or do you think it went behind the scenes and it just became
No, because they sold the patent off to my friend.
Ah, interesting.
Because he was part of DARPA. He's got so many connections, and he's a golfer. I won't go there.
Oh my God.
He was a golf pro down in the US at golf with all the presidents from he's my age, 1 year older than me. From as young as 20, he's been golfing with presidents for years and senators, and he's got so many connections. Yeah, DARPA called him up and said, we have this patent, we don't want anything to do with it. We were told to scuttle it, we'll sell it to you. He goes, what's it for? He goes, anti-gravity propulsion. Oh. He says, but you're gonna have to spend $500 million to really make it work.
Casually anti-gravity propulsion.
It's like, goes, yeah, I'll take one. I'll take one of those.
He goes, how much? He goes, $1, make it legal.
Yeah.
They gave it to him.
Wow.
But we got scuttled by COVID, and my head engineer passed away. He got COVID and died 2 days later.
Oh no.
And he has 14 or 15 of the patents we were about to use, and his family won't release them. So we just scuttled the project. We need those devices as part of our group.
Yeah.
So it's still possible. So yeah, I've seen it. There is an actual very huge document of how to build anti-gravity propulsion. So guess what? The theory is actually reality. We just got to build it.
Yeah. Make it practical, hey?
Don't hate on those tinfoilers.
It's not warp drive. It's not faster than light speed. It's anti-gravity propulsion.
Yeah.
But we put a lot of fuel people out of business, and they'd probably shoot us.
Yeah, well,
probably.
It's like the guy who invented the water-powered engine too, right? Just
what happened to him?
Oh, he was
suicided.
What happened to the guy who invented the cyclotron, where you could go in a building that was spinning and go into other dimensions? He went to do a presentation to the government and was found dead in his hotel.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Down in Mojave Desert. Yeah, I'm not going to get into names. People can look it up. I can't give everything away. Go look it up. I went to the building.
Yeah, it's wild how common suiciding is with
they said he died of a heart attack, but his thing is when his wife found out and she went to get the body, it had been cremated within 8 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or there's patents for heart attack guns as well. So I'm saying.
Men in Black or CIA took them out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I also went to Big Rock down in Arizona. You ever heard of Big Rock?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Big giant granite boulder that broke in half.
right?
That thing is amazing. We sat there all night and we saw a couple things too. And again, still looking at it. That was a great night. We had about 15, 20 of us. And we sat there all night long by that rock. And it felt really weird. You could feel some sort of vibe in the air.
Yeah.
And it was right on, well, Big Rock is on the middle of a ley line. One of the more powerful ley lines.
That makes sense. Then for sure.
Well, it's interesting how.
So I was going to say, I got to start looking at all these reports for the last 10 years and actually try and pin them down to ley lines.
Yes.
And I don't have a good ley line map because it keeps changing. I need a up to date. Where's the most powerful strength ley lines and see what happens. And that's my project for the next as I retire.
You need like an intern to plot them all for you.
You know what's super interesting is not this February before, I did an episode on ley lines and even the convergence of UFO sightings over the intersection of the eclipse paths from 2017 to the one last year was just undeniable. How these authenticated from multiple databases, including MUFON, how there was a convergence over these eclipse paths that crossed over North America.
Yeah, it's they're watching. They love, and did the UFOs take out nuclear silos and shut all the nukes down back in the 50s or 60s? Yes. Were they present when Vietnam War was going on? Yes. Because I've seen documents that, they were the Foo Fighters. Are they over there? Were they over there when the Iraq War started or Desert Storm? Yes. They were documented. So they're taking an interest in our planet. I guess they want to make sure we don't destroy ourselves. It's either that or if we do, they'll move in right away and clean it up. Start again. I don't know. Makes you wonder if we have been seeded. I love that Prometheus movie where they see the guy fall into the water and he sees the planet.
Oh, that was wild.
I love that one. I love sci-fi.
Yeah. And I mean, you may not like this given the tinfoil hat nature, but it's interesting to see how much Hollywood often predicts some of these theories before they actually come out in the rest of public, right?
How did we get the flip phone? The Star Trek communicator.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Started as fiction, and then became reality.
Yep. And exactly. Now, a little known fact, but maybe you do know it. Did anybody watch the X-Files? 10 seasons of X-Files. I watched every single one.
Yeah. And the movies. Yeah.
Okay. And the movies. So were they really, really good script writers that came up with all that stuff, or were they pulling out real files?
Right. Insider information. Yeah.
It was all real files.
Yeah.
Hollywoodized, as I call it.
Of course. Real files. Jazzed up for
Yeah, they even pulled some files from MUFON and used them. MUFON's 52 years or 54 years old now or something. We celebrated our 50 year just a little while ago. A couple years ago. So they were real. They were based on real files. Hollywoodized.
Every episode, you think?
Almost every episode, yeah.
So I remember reading that the first season at least had, I think each episode was based off a real FBI or CIA case file. And one of them is about Eddie, that guy. Spoiler alert. He's this serial killer that pops up like every 50 years over a few hundred years and like elongates himself through vents and stuff. And I'm like, how's this based on a real case? And I started looking it up and it's like they have no idea for what it is, but pretty terrifying.
It was a case, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think they all were. Near the end, they were writing their own, obviously, because I think they were running out of cases, and some cases weren't being given to them.
Well, and some of them were things like Elvis and a UFO near the end type thing, right? Yeah.
I think the best Hollywood line of any sci-fi show regarding UFOs was Men in Black when they said, Elvis, no, he went home. He didn't die. I love sci-fi, obviously. I don't watch anything else.
Nice.
Well, Dave, thanks for jumping on. If people want to get involved with MUFON or want to become a field investigator, how can they head down that path? How can they get in contact with you guys?
Happy to share all that, but the last thing I want to say is, guys, this is all about big D disclosure. The big D, not the little d. Big D disclosure. That's what this is all about. So if you want to become a member of MUFON, you can join MUFON Canada. I think it's $35 a year, and you'll get newsletters and you'll get insider information. And you can just go to MUFONCanada.com. If you want to become a field investigator, you go to MUFON.com, you sign up as a field investigator. You have to do a course. You have to buy the book, and it's a couple $100 by the time you get it up here. I would do it online because you save the $50 shipping, because that thing's so heavy and shipping charges are horrendous. Do it online, because then you have, and buy the lifetime, and you can always refer back to it. So MUFONCanada.com to become a member, MUFON.com to become an FI, or you can also become a MUFON international member, but that's not the same as Canadian. And that's about $100 a year, and you get the e-journal, the electronic journal, once a month. We only put out our newsletter quarterly, but ours is more insider. Now, if you become a field investigator, you get a lot more insider information. You get access to all the files, and you get to have fun, right, Nathan? Yeah, when you were a field investigator.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I'm not going to Hollywoodize it. Most of it's sitting in front of your computer sending emails.
Yeah, historical weather data, looking where
Nice.
planets were in the sky.
But
and,
you get to investigate and come to that conclusion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the fun part. And
Yeah.
if you're lucky and you're willing, you can go out to some of these sites and get involved. And I've done a lot, obviously. I've traveled all over. So yeah, you can, it's enjoyable. I have about $500 worth of stuff in my garage that I've never used, which is forensic kits, because I've never had to use them. You know, plaster casts and sterile bags and all. I have that full forensic kit outside.
Yeah.
In my garage. What a waste. But anyways, one of these days it'll come in use. Actually, I used the shovel the other day to plant some bulbs in the dark.
Nice.
I couldn't find my shovel. I went, I got one in that kit.
Justified. Yeah.
And batteries were leaking. I had to replace all my batteries. So yeah, that's all I'm saying is MUFONCanada.com, become a member, pay your $35, get some more information, get onto the website, the members only area, and see some stuff. And field investigator, you have to be dedicated though, right? You have to actually put some effort to it. And you're not going to do a lot. It's going to be 3 or 4 cases a month. So you're talking 4 to 8 hours per case. So it's not a lot of time, but it's rewarding. It's exciting. So yeah, please become part of MUFON Canada.
Thanks, Dave. We really appreciate having you on.
Oh, I'm glad I said yes, because it's been a while, and I really hope people start looking at these videos and look for gravitational lensing.
Yeah, and maybe we can get some of those images and share them to social media too.
All right, I'll send you some stuff out. I'll get Chad to pull the ones that we want to share. He's writing the scientific paper right now. We actually had Lou Alzano involved in it, because we've called it the 6th observable. There's 5. We're calling it number 6, and we want his okay on it.
So this would be CE6 then, is that correct?
Well, and let's not call it that. The 5 observables is, go fast.
Of course, yes.
Quick, quick turns. All it goes underwater. Transmedia changes. That's the 5 observables to prove that it is a UFO that you're looking. And the 6th one now is warp bubbles. I'll just call it warp bubbles. So we're publishing a paper, and we've got a couple other scientists and doctors reviewing it, looking at it. It'll be out in either MUFON or another couple MUFON type groups by next week. So
awesome. Thanks, Dave.
Anytime.
So tonight we talked about UFOs, ET experiences, disclosure. We talked about tech, a bit about conspiracies, the future of UFO investigations, and of course, MUFON Canada. Did you or someone you know ever encounter a UFO or experience any sort of UFO phenomena? We'd love to connect with you. Send us a message or add your thoughts and comments below, and we'll respond right back. Thanks for joining us. Remember, stay weird, and we'll see you next time on Midnight Mysteries. Have a good night.